Yeah, we start this monumental stretch of play now in the Big Ten this weekend. Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. So it's going to start to get sorted out. Now, Penn State, they've looked extremely good at times. They've got really good wins on their resume against Auburn in particular. Went to Wisconsin, who's starting to figure things out and is now going to be a factor in the Big Ten West. Then Sean Clifford gets hurt. They're unprepared against Iowa with a backup quarterback and Taquan Roberson, even though they somewhat dominated the game early, let that slip away as a 2-score lead, and then lose this mind-boggling game to an Illinois team that's arguably the worst in the Big Ten, or so we thought, that just beat them up front, and they lose in 9 overtimes. And so now Penn State certainly hobbling. They're missing some players on the defense is really good, but they're starting to get beat up on that side of the ball. Clifford's hurt. He's got rib issues. He seems to be compromised. It's not necessarily a Penn State team that's rolling into Columbus.
No, certainly not. And that was kind of the conversation with the Ohio State, Ryan Day and the Ohio State players today. And predictably, they said, this is still a very good Penn State team. Ryan Day and a couple of the offensive players pointed specifically to Penn State's defense, which has still played very well despite the losses. And these losses have been close. Obviously the game over the weekend against Illinois was 9 overtimes with the new college football overtime rule, where you have to go for 2 after, I think it's the second overtime. So a weird ending to that game, but that's an Illinois team that Penn State, a top 20 team, should certainly have won going away. I think at one point I think it was the third quarter, Illinois had 300 rushing yards, and I tweeted something about that they face Travion Henderson next week, who is one of the tops in the country in terms of yards per carry. So I think Ohio State should have no problem moving the ball offensively, whether that's on the ground or through the air, though I think they will be tested a bit more in the passing game in terms of what Penn State has in terms of defensive backs. I think it's on the other side where, yes, this is the most like for like in terms of pure athletes that Ohio State's defense has faced. But as you mentioned, Sean Clifford, it sounds like he's going to play, but still banged up. He didn't look great last week in playing against Illinois. They don't have a ton when it comes to running the ball. It's been a mixed bag there. So, with Ohio State playing as confident as they are right now, as I touched on earlier, it's just not a good recipe for success. Obviously, this game is at Ohio Stadium. It's a night game, which this game in Columbus hasn't been a night game in several years now. They've always been night games at Penn State. So fans were certainly happy to see that. I'm sure it'll be juiced up at the Horseshoe. One of the Ohio State spokespersons said today they're expecting, a sellout 102,000, whatever it is now, the total capacity there. So a lot of things pointing in Ohio State's favor. I think it would be hard to pick against the Buckeyes in this one, but Penn State, as Ryan Day said multiple times today, Penn State has figured out ways to play Ohio State tough, and this easily, aside from maybe Oregon, is the most like-for-like talent matchup type game that Ohio State's played. And, they certainly won't just roll through them like they have some of these other games, even if they end up pulling away in the second half or something like that, as we've seen before.
Yeah, Penn State has certainly been the program since 2016, and of course the block kick and won the Big Ten championship miraculously and all that. That has been the closest to Ohio State in recruiting and on the field. They have given the Buckeyes the most difficult games by far. It's not even close to anybody else in the Big Ten. This particular team, though, is the closest, I still think, athletically, as you just mentioned, a few different ways, but got to take into account where the mindset of the team and the confidence level of the team is, and its coaching staff and head coach, who now famously, if you check out social media, used a few odd terms in referencing the shoe as the big house, which is, of course, in Ann Arbor, and referring to Ohio State as Illinois. We're focused on Illinois. Well, to even put that word with Illinois in the same sentence prior to the Ohio State game is rather ironic as well. And then there's a lot of news concerning, and of course, we understand that James Franklin has signed with Jimmy Sexton, and there are 2 huge head coaching job openings at USC and LSU. So we don't know exactly where. You got to think where the team's focused, but the head coach needs to be there too.
Absolutely. And I don't cover Penn State on a daily basis. I look forward to talking to some of our Penn State writers this coming week. But, just seeing some of the comments and having covered James Franklin a little bit at various events, you do have to wonder if maybe whether he ends up taking one of these jobs or not, just being linked with big name programs like that, if he's giving it some thought and maybe not spending as much time on what he's doing in state college. You would certainly hope not. You would like to think that even if he is considering those things, that those are being handled by agents and whatnot. You mentioned signing with a new agent there. So obviously things aren't going well. And maybe last week you could place some of the blame on there. And if things go poorly against Ohio State, I think that will certainly come up again. James Franklin has before confused team names in press conferences. So while that's funny, I don't think that is necessarily a sign that the team won't be focused on Ohio State, but it does just kind of show what's going on, that things aren't right. And obviously, let's not forget, this is a team that really struggled out of the gates last year. Now, a strange year for everybody involved, and Penn State certainly got it going back together by the end of the season. I think they won 5 straight games, 10 the year, whatever it was. But this isn't a program that has continued its dominance just under Ohio State in the Big Ten these last couple of years. It's been kind of a mixed bag of results for the Nittany Lions. So whatever the case may be, it's clear that things are weird. Now, if you can go and you beat Ohio State, everyone stops talking about that. Things are good again. It'll be very interesting to see, though, how they come out, how they play in Columbus, just kind of what the Nittany Lions look like on Saturday night.
Yeah, and to be fair to James Franklin, and it is funny, the memes and the various things that come out on social media to a certain extent. But to be fair to James Franklin, to Pat's point, shoot, I know from my experience sitting here talking for hours and hours and hours, there are things that come out of my mouth where I'm referencing a particular player that I know who that player is. I've watched him a million times, but I may, replace Jim for John or something like that and say the wrong name on occasion. So certainly we're all capable of doing that from time to time, no question about that.